Hello, friends. This is Mack Payne, owner and operator of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast, where we bring you news about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. In this video, my primary purpose is to let you know I have just published another episode on the podcast. This one is number 3212. It is part 2 of the interview I did with the War and Life Project 2 years ago. I don't even remember doing the interview, but it was a good one. I'm pretty sure it was me talking on that interview. Could have been an AI voice, but I'm sure it was me. When you listen to it, you'll probably agree. In the previous episode, I covered the part of the interview where I discussed my first year in Vietnam, the one that I call a chapter out of the National Geographic's magazine, because of all the things I did on the ground with the 4th Division. In this episode, I share with you part 2 of that interview, where I talked about the year I spent with the 101st Airborne Division as an ARA Cobra gunship pilot. I highly encourage you to listen to it because it tells a lot about the life of a Cobra gunship pilot in Vietnam, especially an ARA pilot. I was very fortunate to be an ARA pilot. Aerial Rocket Artillery. That is an aviation unit that's in the artillery channels. So when an FO, or forward observer on the ground, needs some fire support, he would have the option of calling in tube artillery or aerial rocket artillery. Most of them, I believe, preferred aerial rocket artillery because we could go out, put eyes on the target, and be more accurate when we would shoot for the guys on the ground. We got to be real good at it because that's all we did. Our aircraft were set up in what they call the heavy hog configuration. That would have 4 rocket pods attached to the short little stubby wings, 2 on each side, with a total of 76 rockets. I'll guarantee you that is a lot of firepower to be able to shoot down on the targets. And also, we were more accurate. And I'm not ashamed to say, and I'll say it, I believe I was probably the best rocket shooter in Vietnam, if not the best, close to it. Because right after I got over there, I realized how hard it was to shoot rockets, to make them to go where you want them to go. You aim one way and you fire the rocket and it goes over here, or it goes over here. That was a big deal when you were shooting within 50 meters of the friendlies. Finally, I got tired of being called names and laughed at because my rockets didn't go in the right place. One day I was in the ops office of our unit and I looked at the map of our AO and I saw a spot down there that was enclosed in red on the map with red lines through it. I asked the ops guy, what is that down there? And he said, that's a free fire zone. I said, free fire zone? What's that? He said, oh, that's an area that's been cleared and you can go out there anytime, fire as many rockets as you want without getting clearance. Because getting clearance was a real big deal over there. You had to be very careful where you were shooting, because if you shoot the wrong people, you could be in big trouble. So I was very concerned about that because I didn't think I had the ability to shoot rockets where they ought to go as much as I should have. So as soon as he told me that, I said, you mean you can go anytime, shoot as much as you want? He said, yes, you can. So within 3 minutes, my entire flight platoon, which consisted of 2 aircraft, we were pulling pitch and heading out to the free fire zone. Beginning that day, every time we had the opportunity, that's where we would go, out to the free fire zone and shoot rockets. Thinking back on it, I realized what a wonderful opportunity that was because there was no limit. We could shoot as many rockets as we wanted, no limits on the fuel. We would be out there, meeting my platoon of 2 aircraft, all the time, firing rockets, practicing, learning how to shoot them where they go exactly where we wanted to. learning all the little innuendos about trim and power settings and everything. Meanwhile, while we were doing that, all the rest of the guys in the battery, when they weren't flying, they'd be back in the battery area, sitting, sunning on beach chairs, or drinking beer, or throwing darts, or playing cards. But not me and my guys. We were out practicing. And there's no doubt in my mind, I got to be a real good rocket shooter. And that was the greatest thing in the world, to know that we could go out and support our guys who were in big trouble. A lot of times we'd go out and they would be in some bad times and we could go help them and save their lives. So many times we'd go on a mission and afterwards they would say, "Thank you guys. God bless ARA. You saved our lives." Things like that make you feel real good. And that's what I talk about in this podcast episode. I also put a lot of emphasis on our time out at Lamson 719 at Quezon. Our battery moved out there, lock, stock, and barrel, and stayed out there for the entire 6 weeks. And it was a very target-rich environment. Back in the base camp, we would fly missions and sometimes have off days where we wouldn't do anything. Out at Quezon, it was every day. You get up in the morning first thing and you fly all day long, shooting rockets all day. And in this podcast episode, I'm urging you to go listen to, I talk about our experiences out in Laos supporting the South Vietnamese, because Americans were not allowed to have boots on the ground during that operation, which occurred right after the invasion of Cambodia, and everybody raised such a fuss. So after that, they said, no Americans can go out of South Vietnam, but you can fly over into Laos to support the Vietnamese who could go out there. That's what we did for 6 weeks. That is something that's covered in this podcast episode. So do yourself a favor. Go on over to the podcast and listen to it. And I've made it easy for you. You don't need to go and search for my podcast, Vietnam Veteran News. All you've got to do is go down below this 1965 vintage Philco TV set and click on the link that'll take you straight to the podcast and directly to that podcast episode. And you can start listening immediately. But you'll notice when you go down there below this TV set, right above the link to the podcast episode will be a link that says, "Buy me a coffee." And that is a bald-faced request for financial assistance to this podcast. When you click on the link to buy me a coffee, you will have the opportunity to buy me a cup for a mere $5. Now, you're not limited to one. You can buy 2, 5, 10, whatever you want to. I request this financial assistance because I have been doing this podcast for 12 years, put out over 3,200 episodes, and I've paid almost all the expenses involved in keeping the podcast on the air. I've received a little assistance over the years, but not enough. So I'm asking you, if you enjoy the content on the Vietnam Veteran News podcast, please give us a little support by clicking on that link and buying me a coffee. I'd greatly appreciate it. But the important thing right now is for you to go down there and click on the link to the podcast and listen to me describe what it was like to be a Cobra gunship pilot with the aerial rocket artillery in Vietnam with the 101st Airborne Division back in 1970 and 71. So with that message, I'm ending this video where I told you about the next podcast episode. Thank you for visiting the video in this Philco TV set, and we'll talk soon.